Like I don't want to punch. It's Belle Lipton who's here with the International Press Review. We're going to start out in Israel, where the papers are split over two very different attacks that have taken place over the past 24 hours.
Yes, and the newspaper websites are just starting to react to this news story here. A 1.5-year-old Palestinian baby killed after Jewish settlers reportedly started a fire after throwing fire bombs into a house in the West Bank. Hebrew graffiti, according to Haaretz, Hebrew graffiti is meant to have been found at the house reading "Revenge and long live the Messiah." Now, obviously, the print papers haven't had time to respond to that. That'll all be in tomorrow's papers. You might imagine, though, that the print papers today would be focused on yesterday's gay pride march and the attack that happened there in Jerusalem. But it didn't actually feature on Haaretz's front page. The Jerusalem Post, more conservative paper, did have it on the front page, but it kept to the facts. There was no editorial, no opinion pieces at all. It did quote in the article that it has in there the leader of the extremist, it calls it, Lehava organisation, who says that in Jerusalem there is no place for such a parade and no reason for people to be proud about it, i.e. homosexuality. If such people can have a pride march, then soon paedophiles and everyone else with such inclinations can hold a march. So obviously fairly strong sentiment there. Now, this hasn't got a huge amount of coverage across the world in the papers, but it did make the front page of the UK's Independent. You can see the perpetrators there having with a knife, in fact, still in shot there. But if you want a think piece on this, you have to go to the US press, and you'll find that in the New York Times, which has a piece arguing that this attack essentially shakes Israel's self-image as a bastion of tolerance. And now it uses all sorts of comments throughout the internet and through Twitter to piece that together, and essentially to say that we might think, or Israel might want to portray that image, but it's not as tolerant as it thinks it is.
If we move to the Indian press now, the front pages, they've been showing pretty much the same thing, haven't they?
No, it's not the same story, but they've been showing the same thing as each other. You're completely right there. And essentially, it's one story that's dominating the front pages. This is the hanging or the execution yesterday of Yaqub Memon, whose body was taken through the streets. You can see on the front of the Hindu there yesterday after his execution. Yaqub was one of the men behind the 1993 bombings in Mumbai. Now, just to remind our younger viewers, those were a series of bomb blasts that killed 257 people in Mumbai. They were allegedly to avenge the killing of Muslims in riots a few months earlier, but obviously other reasons were given at the time. Now, it's on the front page of the Times of India as well, which dedicates inside a double-page spread to the whole thing. So it has an article talking about the courtroom drama. So it really tries to play on the whole dramatics of this. Will they, won't they, essentially bring him to justice, or as they call it, bring him to execution. Yaqub's last 24 hours, they say, were a little bit like a Hollywood courtroom drama, with the topmost judges of the country being woken up in the middle of the night and having to dash across town for one final hearing. Now, Yaqub had asked for a postponement to his execution, and he had been hopeful that he might get it right up until the moment where his death warrant was read. In the end, says the paper, they rejected Yaqub's final plea. Lots of language there evoking a saga and the last chapter for him. Now, despite the dramatic nature of this ending, in an editorial, the paper says closure for the victim's family will only come with the arrest of the kingpin. Now, that's referring to the masterminds behind this attack, Dawood Ibrahim and Yaqub's brother, Tiger Memon.
Well, it's interesting because India rarely carries out the death sentence, doesn't it? So why was it imposed in this case?
Well, India's only actually imposed the death sentence or carried it through 3 times since 2004. So obviously this has reignited the debate on the death penalty in India. The First Post, a prominent network, or English language rather, news network in India, its editor comes down very much in favour of capital punishment, of the death penalty, with a somewhat controversial and disparaging conclusion, which reads, it might be possible to abolish death penalties in extremely advanced countries where people are normally law-abiding and the state is strong enough and has enough resources to even attempt to correct the behaviour patterns of deadly criminals. But India is not anywhere near that stage. Obviously, quite a disparaging remark to make on his own country. Now, the Times of India is not at all of that opinion. In that paper, they come down completely on the other side. They quote Congress leader Shashi Tharoor saying the death penalty is wrong both in principle and in practice. And the Hindu seems to suggest that it leans the same way, with a little cartoon showing the death penalty, or people against death penalty, watering the gallows so that they turn into a harmless playground, or a swing, essentially.
Gosh, nice little painting, a nice bright shine on a fairly grim subject.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for that, Belle Lupton, with the International Press Review. Of course, thanks also to Delano D'Souza bringing us the latest from the business desk. I'm Hala Mohideen. You're watching France 24. Do stay with us.